Within the Black community, there is an ongoing struggle over identity. Stepping into that void are ideological movements selling an alternative history, clouding actual records. Specifically, organizations like the Moorish Science Temple and certain factions of the Nation of Islam teach that Black Americans are actually of Moorish, Moabite, or Asiatic descent. To justify this, some of these groups rely on terms like Africoid, a categorization designed to describe someone who has African physical features, but technically originates from outside the African continent. But when pressed for proof, these origin stories lean entirely on memorized religious doctrine and circular logic rather than empirical evidence. By adopting these organized pseudo-histories, believers actively sever their own ties to an authentic, documented past. To dismantle a long-standing historical myth, you need an organized truth. You need the scientific method. We can test the Moorish origin story using 3 distinct disciplines: genetics, archaeology, and geography. Our goal is straightforward. We are going to subject the Asiatic Black man hypothesis to a rigorous stress test against empirical reality. We start with geography. This map shows the physical separation of Africa from the Levant and Arabian plate. Tectonic shifts created a distinct border. Around 60,000 years ago, early Homo sapiens walked out of Africa, traveling north through this Sinai bottleneck into the Middle East. When migrating humans reached the Levant, they encountered Neanderthals. Genetic sequencing proves these populations interbred. This admixture created a new, amalgamated genetic lineage, introducing phenotypes like lighter skin and different hair textures. But Homo sapiens remaining in Africa experienced no admixture, retaining 0 Neanderthal DNA. This is the species migrating humans mixed with outside of Africa. The prominent brow ridge and elongated cranial structure belong to a Neanderthal. Because the admixture event happened in the Levant, the ancient Canaanites, Moabites, and the Asiatic man all belong to that admixed Eurasian lineage. Biologically speaking, claiming a Moorish or Asiatic identity means claiming a genetic line mixed with Neanderthal DNA, a profile entirely distinct from pure African ancestry. The second stress test targets the archaeological timeline. A core claim of the Moorish movement is that Moabite culture birthed African civilization. The historical record points directly to Kemet, or ancient Egypt. Kemet was unified and active nearly 3 millennia before the first mention of Moabite culture. The Narmer palette dates to 3100 BC. It depicts an early African king subduing a captive, documenting a complex society long before Moab existed. When Moabites carved this stele in the 9th century BC, they heavily borrowed from neighbors. Their deities were directly copied from older African civilizations. The timeline shows that human civilization developed independently in Africa. The Canaanite and Moabite cultures merely adapted these systems centuries later. Our final stress test applies geography to the claim that Black Americans are descendants of Moroccans. This map tracks the volume of the transatlantic slave trade between 1501 and 1867. The data shows heavy departures from West and Central Africa. There are 0 slave ships recorded leaving from Morocco. Departure port architecture confirms this. Forts like this dot the West African coast, tracing Black American roots to unadmixed populations in West and Central Africa. When tested against genetics, archaeology, and cartography, the Moorish origin myth collapses. The tragic irony of this movement is that by seeking a supposedly elevated Asiatic identity, believers actively de-Africanize themselves. They trade a direct, documented connection to the original makers of humanity, the unbroken Homo sapiens lineage, for an admixed Eurasian legacy. Cultural unity doesn't require borrowing someone else's ancient history. True empowerment comes from looking at the undeniable scientific reality and claiming the authentic West and Central African roots that were there all along.